So, first topic of the episode. I watched a season finale of a show that I actually talked about. It's one of the first topics I ever talked about on this show. And that show is on Amazon Prime, and yes, it's called The Expanse. Season 5 just aired on a week-to-week basis, which I thought was great. I thought a very welcome, different type of a release that has been going on for a lot, like, Netflix just releasing the entire season, which I also like. I mean, who doesn't like to binge watch things? But especially with hard sci-fi, it's pretty awesome just, having that build up and being able to digest the episode over the entire week. So I really appreciated that, and I had so much fun watching this. And if you didn't watch my previous video, which I would understand because it's pretty shitty. It's like one of my first, I think it's my second ever episode of this show, so it's pretty bad. So I'm probably just kind of going to reiterate some things from that episode in that video here, because I'm not going to spoil anything in Season 5. This is not even really going to be a Season 5 review, because I feel like this show isn't as popular as it fucking should be. Like, this show is so amazing. I've watched 5 seasons of it, and it blows me away every time. Even the seasons that, might be considered quote-unquote underwhelming, even though they're not underwhelming, like, they're still fucking amazing. It's still great. It's still The Expanse. It's still the characters I love and the world that I love. And it still answers questions that need to be answered, that the show puts in front of you. So if you don't know what The Expanse is, it's a hard sci-fi on Amazon Prime. It used to be on Sci-Fi, but there's a lot of cool backstory behind it getting canceled, and the fans being kind of having fan protests online. Well, not protests, but petitions online to bring it back. And then, Amazon got it, bought it, brought it on Prime, and revived it, which it's a really cool story if you look into it. But if you don't know what The Expanse is, it's like it takes place in the distant future. I actually kind of forget what year it is, but it's definitely very much in the future. And people still live on Earth, but people also live in the asteroid belt. These are called belters, and people are also living on Mars and trying to colonize Mars and terraform Mars. And these are obviously just called Martians. They're all humans, they're all people. There's no aliens yet. Spoiler. Excuse me. But yeah. So very hard sci-fi. That's the genre. It's not, there's some definitely sci-fi action, sci-fi adventure elements in here, but the concepts and the themes are definitely come from a hard sci-fi. And if you're a sci-fi fan, I don't know how you haven't watched this yet. But, yeah, so I watched the season finale of Season 5. Watched the whole season. And the conclusion that I'm coming to after watching Season 5 is that this show has to be in the best of all time conversation. It just has to. It's actually funny. I even right before I wrote the script for this show, I just typed into Google, best TV shows of all time, scrolling through, and The Expanse is, coincidentally enough, there. It was one of them. All the fucking, logos and, posters of the the best shows of all time, when I Googled it, one of them is The Expanse. Some of them are, and The Expanse is almost better than pretty much all of the other ones that are up there, maybe other than Breaking Bad or something like that. But again, to each his own. But it objectively, I believe this show needs to be in that conversation. So let's just kind of go over what an amazing, great show has to do to be in that conversation. So one, it has to have a good, intriguing, general overall premise. Think Breaking Bad. Oh, a chemistry teacher decides to start, making meth because he wants to provide for his family because he has lung cancer and he might die anytime. That's an intriguing general premise. Think The Americans, like Russian KGB, agents living in America as American citizens during the Cold War era. That's an intriguing general premise. And the opening scene of The Expanse kind of just gives you an intriguing general premise. An overarching thing that is consistent throughout the entire show, even if the main thing that's going on in the season is unrelated to it, but it's still relevant behind the scenes. So, yeah, great on that aspect. A show has to have fantastic world building. Think of Game of Thrones or Firefly, for example, having these really expansive, large, overarching worlds that feel like they there's so many stories that can be told in this universe other than this one that we're seeing played out right now. There's so many other stories. And The Expanse does that to a T with the three factions, Earthers, Martians, and Belters kind of being at odds with each other. There's tensions between each other. Some of these issues come to a head, especially in season 5. You've seen season 5, you know what I'm talking about. Episode 4, holy shit. But yeah, so this show has fantastic world building. It has plenty of mysteries and questions that need to be answered and do get answered eventually throughout the show. Think about Twin Peaks or True Detective Season 1, and only True Detective Season 1, because that's kind of the only good season of True Detective. But it's spectacular. It's one of the best single seasons of television I've ever seen. And there's a lot of questions that are brought up in both Twin Peaks and True Detective Season 1 that eventually do get answered and keep you intrigued and keep you coming back every single episode. And this one has a lot of questions, especially, like I said, in the very opening scene, dealing with what eventually you come to know as the proto-molecule. And there's still so many questions behind the proto-molecule that haven't gotten answered, but there's a lot that has been answered, through the seasons. I think maybe one of the worst. It's not. I hate saying the worst season, but because season 4 is pretty awesome. I actually really like season 4, and I kind of love season 4. But a lot of questions are answered about the proto-molecule in season 4, which is awesome. Which is like the most. It's not irrelevant, but I guess it's just objectively the worst. But I kind of would say the season 1 is kind of objectively the worst season of The Expanse, because it's, you're trying to get into the world and the characters. And that brings me to the final, well, not the final, we'll get there, hold on, skipped over another one. But another thing that amazing shows have to do is have quality set pieces, like moments of absolute epicness. So think of Game of Thrones with, Battle of the Bastards, or the Hard Home scene, or Battle of Blackwater, these immense battle scenes that are built up throughout the season, and they come to a head, and they deliver on that build, like that hype. Maybe not Battle of Winterfell, because I think it's like one of the worst battles in the show, but let's just not even talk about season 8 of Game of Thrones, because it's horrible. But also think about, war shows like Band of Brothers. There's some built-up action, war scenes in that show, and those absolutely deliver. Sorry, I got a notification on my phone. Shut up, phone. I'm trying to review The Expanse, okay? Leave me alone, CNN, Jesus. And finally, the main thing, I think the most important thing a great show has to do is have amazingly compelling characters that develop throughout the show and have really large and, I guess, different character arcs. That, a character needs to be in a different place in season 5 or season 4 than they were in season 1. This is probably why Game of Thrones was so popular, is because certain characters Like, say, Jamie, for example, is such a different character from season 1 than he is in season 7, even though he does kind of revert back in season 8, which is, again, season 8 of Game of Thrones, it just triggers me every time I mention it. But, yeah, like, also The Sopranos, you know? Tony Soprano is a completely different character from season 1 than he is in the final season. Like, he just is. He's a different character, and he's had to go through and deal with a lot of things, including killing his fucking friends and family. But, yeah, like, these shows have characters that have these really large character arcs that span throughout the whole show. And this show, holy shit, does this show have this element of an amazing show. Let alone the main 4 characters, Alex, Amos, Naomi, and James Holden, they all have really great character arcs. Maybe, I mean, Holden's kind of the same throughout every single season, but that's kind of his character. But the other 3 are just so they're so different, they're so unique, and they end in a place, especially in season 5, so different, and things have happened to them. They've gone through so much shit, and you know so much more about them. You have this different love for them. And not only the 4 main characters, but other side characters have these immense character arcs. Characters that are only in the show for 1 season have awesome character arcs. Like, it's insane. Every single character that comes in and out of the show is phenomenal. Even some characters that you think might be annoying, they do something that makes them kind of awesome in their own unique way. And I love that. I love when a show does that. It's so great. I mean, that's why, I was about to say Game of Thrones is going to be the best TV show of all time until season, 8 happened. But, yeah, so when a show consistently does that for 5 seasons, does all of these elements consistently for 5 seasons, like, it's gotta be in the discussion. Like, I can't think of another TV show that is objectively better than this show, other than maybe Breaking Bad. Like, I mean, I can't say Firefly is better than this show. I mean, Firefly is subjectively my favorite show of all time, even though it's only 1 season, but it's just so good. Like, you can't say that because it hasn't been, 5 seasons long. And like this, I mean, weirdly, it's definitely in the conversation for best sci-fi show of all time. I mean, there's sci-fi. I mean, if you're talking hard sci-fi, I mean, you're talking Battlestar Galactica, Star Trek, Black Mirror, Stargate, other shows like that. And man, dude, like, I mean, I guess you can't say it's better than Star Trek, but like, I mean, I didn't grow up watching Star Trek, so that's kind of a disclaimer. I feel like if I did grow up with Star Trek, kind of like my brother did, I would have definitely a different opinion on this. But like, still, like, if you did grow up with Star Trek, like, watch The Expanse. Like, The Expanse, I mean, it's not episodic like Star Trek can mostly be, but it has a consistent narrative that, dropping my pen, has a consistent narrative that drives the plot along and makes characters grow over time. And I feel like I don't know. I like the characters, and I'm more attached to the characters when there's like consistent narrative. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion. Doesn't mean I don't love Star Trek. Star Trek's the shit. Battlestar Galactica too. I kind of would argue The Expanse might be a little bit better than Battlestar Galactica. I mean, we'll see how The Expanse ends though, because I think that's a definitely big thing about my opinion with Battlestar Galactica. I actually do kind of like the ending. I know some certain people maybe might not like it, but I mean, I still really like it. But it's definitely, at least The Expanse is at least in the conversation for one of the best hard sci-fi shows of all time. And I honestly think it's in my conversation of being one of the best shows of all time. And it also does other bonus things that other shows don't do. Like, all the technical aspects of this show are like greatest of all time, GOAT level. They're GOAT level technical aspects that they consistently put in front of your eyes every single episode. We're talking the effects in the show, probably some of the best I have ever seen. And there's been like things on the internet saying like they have like a shorter budget now, and it still delivers on these amazing visual effects scenes, space battles and stuff. Like, it's insane how good it is. I've never seen anything like it, really. Even in like mainstream sci-fi action adventure films, I'm like, I'll prefer watching the Expanse action, to be honest. Plus, it's considered one of the most scientifically accurate like shows in space like ever. So that it has that going for it, which is really cool. It has those like really cool sci-fi elements that are scientifically accurate, with, the gravity and, ships like traveling space backwards because they're decelerating, which, it wouldn't make sense if a ship is like moving forward trying to decelerate. Obviously the engines would be flipped around, so like force would stop the ship. I mean, it's really cool. Like, it knows about physics. I mean, that's really cool. That's another element about the show that's really special, because no other show does that. No other show even considers doing that, which they don't have to do. They don't have to do that, but they still do because it's just part of the show. It's shot incredibly well, especially in season 5 and season 4. Some certain shots of this film, I'm like, whoa, man. Like, they know what to do behind the camera, man. Like, some of these shots are just really, really, they just pop off the screen. I'm like, yo, man, these, I don't know, these visuals are just so good. They're film quality. And it just blows me away. Every episode, there's always some certain shot that I'm like, wow, that's a film quality level shot right there. Wow. That's like, certain cinematographers in Hollywood aren't capable of doing that, which is, it's something that's really special. And just lastly, like, the acting, the actors, like, from every single character in the show is so good. Like, I haven't really seen anyone in other things. I mean, there's certain character actors that pop up here and there that you recognize, but there's no major names other than maybe Thomas Jane in like some of the beginning seasons that, he's probably the biggest name. And he's not even the best actor, in the bunch. He doesn't deliver the best performance, even though he does deliver an awesome performance. I love him in the show. But like, every character, the main 4 are spectacular. Especially Amos. Amos might be one of my favorite characters in television history. That's a fact. I think he's one of the best characters in television history. That's a fact. I don't care what anyone says about that. He will be your favorite character if you like my opinions. He's going to be your favorite character for sure. And I mean, just everyone brings it every episode, and they know why they bring it, because the show is clearly something that's really special and they're a part of it, and they obviously want to bring their best to every single scene. So, yeah. Is the show absolutely perfect, though? Is it the most perfect show in the world? I mean, no, I wouldn't say that, but it pretty much is, in my opinion. I mean, like, yes, the first season might be a little bit hard to get through because you're getting introduced to all these characters. You don't really know anything about them. I remember the first time I watched season 1, I was like, I really like the show, and I think it's really cool, and I love hard sci-fi, so I'm going to stick with it. But, like, I don't know anything about these characters, and I'm not that emotionally invested yet. And then once season 2 starts and gets going, you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. This is amazing. This is the shit. And then season 3 blows your fucking mind. And then season 4, yeah, it might not blow your fucking mind, but like, the ending of season 4 will. And you'll be like, oh, okay, well, that season is great. I learned so much about the characters. The characters developed so much. It was shot incredibly well. It was acted incredibly well. I got awesome characters that were new for one season that were great. An awesome villain as well. Like, practically still amazing. And then season 5, you're like, well, that just kind of blew me away. Holy shit. This is one of the greatest shows I've ever seen. And that's my opinion. But I mean, like, yeah, the first season might be a little bit hard to get through because you're trying to understand the world, because it's a huge world. There's a lot going on. And you also have this weird, sci-fi, perhaps extraterrestrial element to it that there's a lot of questions about, and you're trying to answer questions about that. But yeah, just try to get through it. I mean, I'm sure all sci-fi, it has symptoms of that like it has a certain grace period that you kind of have to get through a little bit. But it's not to say it's bad. It's just, it's hard to get emotionally invested in season 1 in the beginning. But you'll eventually get there, trust me. Again, like I said, the 4th season, it's not, I don't think it's as good as the 2nd season or the 3rd season or even the 5th season, but I still think stands alone as being still an awesome season of television, especially with the budget that apparently they had that was shortened from the budget that they had in season 2 and 3, I believe. Which is kind of insane. I mean, the location they shot it at was perfect. I mean, I think some of the best cinematography is actually in that season, because they're forced to do a little bit more of just practical cinematography than rely on the effects and CGI of the space battles and stuff like that. I think some points the writing could be a little bit like microscopically better. Proto-molecule size better, even though the proto-molecule is a lot bigger than that, but I mean, doesn't matter. There's certain moments, I think especially in season 5, I was kind of like, maybe you could have done that, like written that dialogue a little bit better, but I'm just kind of nitpicking at this point. I'm nitpicking. I mean, it's still amazing. The writing's still great because it eventually gets to where it's supposed to be, and like it gets the audience in the mindset of where the writers want your mindset to be as an audience member. So yeah, again, something does happen at the very end of season 5 that, if you don't know anything about the behind the scenes related to the actor, you'll watch it and be like, what the fuck was that? Really? That's what we get? What? It's so random. Incredibly random. But like, you look into it in the behind the scenes with the actor and you're like, it's not really the show's fault. And especially with, I don't know when they found this shit out or when these accusations came out or whatever. I didn't really look into it that much because it just kind of pissed me off just reading about and hearing about it. But and it's really sad because of just, how much I love the character. But you have to understand, like, I don't know when the writers, were trying to deal with this problem and this issue, plus, reshooting stuff and rewriting certain things, especially the end during a pandemic. Like, you gotta have to take it with a grain of salt. You just kind of have to accept it and move on. And that's kind of what the show does, but I feel like you could have gave us a little bit more closure with it. I feel like you don't give us enough, because I love the character. We love the character. We've spent 5 seasons with this character, and now they're not going to be in the show anymore. And I feel like I needed something more. But sometimes you just can't get that. And it's unfortunate what happened in real life behind the scenes, but you can't do anything about it. And it's just it's a real shame, I think. But it is what it is. So with that, I mean, I know I haven't really reviewed the 5th season because I haven't summarized it, because I don't want to spoil anything about the show, because I know a lot of people, especially who listen to this, haven't seen this show. And honestly, I think this show is worth getting an Amazon Prime subscription for, a month or 2 to watch this entire thing. And then just cancel it. Whatever. Do that. But, like, watch this fucking show. This show is so good. It deserves all the praise that it gets. And it deserves to be in that conversation of one of the best TV shows of all time. You know, that's what I've experienced when I watched it, and, you know, that's what I think. You know, if I haven't convinced you enough, then I guess, you know, move on and skip this one. But hopefully, you know, you're a sci-fi fan like I am, and you're a sci-fi nerd like I am, and you gotta watch it. You gotta watch The Expanse. Check it out. Hello there. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you're unfamiliar with this channel, this is Nerd Out Sanctuary. I'm your host, Michael. What do I talk about, you say? Well, I talk about anything nerdy. So that's movies, video games, TV shows, comic books every once in a while. Books, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Anything that I feel like talking about. I'm a huge nerd. I hope you're a huge nerd, and I hope we can enjoy our nerdiness together here. This is a full audio podcast available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, the major podcast platforms. So consider going over to those and checking out the full version of of the episode. And other past episodes, please leave me a review and subscribe on those platforms. If you don't want to do that, clipped, shorter versions of those full episodes will be posted here on YouTube. So consider subscribing and liking the videos for more to support me and future content that I will be producing in the future on nerdy stuff. So yeah, thank you, and see you on the next one.